If you are sitting down right now eating a handful of French fries,
Right.
and I were to suddenly start playing a really heavy, booming tuba right next to you,
Like right in the room.
right in the room, those fries would actually register as more bitter to your brain than if I were playing, like, a light, airy flute.
It sounds completely fake, but it is entirely true.
It's wild. But welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we are taking a look at a genuinely paradigm-shifting column. It was published in November 2025 by Monumental Movement Records, or MMR.
Right.
And it's called 50-Year History of Burger Shops and Music, Fast Food, and Sound Branding Culture.
It is honestly a phenomenal piece of research.
Yeah.
Because it challenges this assumption that, well, almost all of us make.
Yeah, exactly.
Because normally, when you walk into a fast food restaurant, you expect a certain level of sensory overload.
Oh, for sure. The bright lights, the menus.
Right. You step through those glass doors and the smell of the fryers hits you. The bright backlit menu boards grab your eyes.
Yeah.
And underneath it all is this ubiquitous background music.
Which we just ignore.
Completely. We tend to treat that audio as sonic wallpaper. We just tune it out before we even reach the counter to order.
But the author of this MMR column argues that this music is not just ambient noise. And it certainly isn't just basic corporate advertising either.
No, it's much deeper.
They call it a sound portrait of the times, which is such a cool phrase.
It really is.
So our mission today is to explore how the background tracks and the sound logos of the last half century actually serve as this oral memory.
Yeah.
They capture exactly what society valued in those specific eras, the literal tempo at which people were living, and, the deeply engineered science of how audio alters consumer psychology.
So by the end of this deep dive, you're going to fundamentally change how you hear and honestly how you taste your next burger.
I know I did after reading this. So where do we start?
Well, to understand the modern, hyper-engineered landscape of audio branding, we really first have to look at how the foundation was poured. The baseline concept that fast food equals happiness, that was entirely constructed by McDonald's back in the 1970s.
Right, specifically in 1971. They launched this massive advertising campaign, and it was architected by the legendary agency DDB.
Doyle Dane Bernbach, yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because DDB was known for completely upending traditional advertising.
Absolutely.
And they produced this track for McDonald's called You Deserve a Break Today.
Right. Composed by Sid Woloshin with lyrics by Dan Callis.
And the source material notes that this wasn't just, a simple, repetitive little jingle.
No, not at all.
It was structured with the sheer euphoria and elevation of a full-on Broadway musical. Like, the singers are literally belting out an invitation to escape your life and get away to McDonald's.
And that concept of escape is the crucial psychological lever here.
How so?
Well, if you look at the cultural context of America in 1971, society was rapidly shifting. It was moving into this highly busy, hyper-consumerist environment.
Right. The daily grind was really intensifying for people.
Exactly. So McDonald's didn't position themselves merely as a place to, acquire cheap calories.
Yeah.
They positioned the restaurant as a psychological release valve. They offered a break.
Yeah.
And they packaged it as this incredibly cheerful, globally accessible pop song.
And the execution of that strategy was so flawless that it achieved something totally unprecedented, like You Deserve a Break Today actually became a legitimate charting pop hit.
Which is insane to think about.
It really is. It was released as a single and entered the radio charts. People were actively calling into their local radio stations requesting a fast food commercial.
It was really the moment commercial advertising music fully breached the fortress of the mainstream pop music industry.
I mean, think about the modern equivalent of that. That would be like a 60-second commercial for Crest toothpaste, racking up, 100 million streams on Spotify.
Right.
And just beating out top pop artists. You are willingly turning up the volume in your car to jam out to a corporate advertisement. It completely shifts the paradigm of what commercial music can even be.
It really does. And McDonald's realized they had struck gold. And they refused to relinquish that cultural relevance.
They just kept going.
Yeah, they kept pushing into emerging mainstream genres. So by 1979, they released the Menu song.
Oh, yeah.
Which utilized a funk and rap style narrative structure.
Wait, Using rap in a mainstream corporate advertisement in 1979, that is incredibly early.
Super early. It was essentially serving as the direct precursor to the massive wave of hip-hop commercials that would dominate, later decades.
So they were proving that ad music didn't have to follow the old dusty rules of Madison Avenue jingles. It could mirror the bleeding edge of the music industry itself.
Exactly. And when they took this strategy global, it became even more sophisticated.
Like in Japan.
Right, let's look at Japan in 1983.
Mhm.
McDonald's rolls out the Let's Meet at McDonald's campaign. But instead of just translating the upbeat American Broadway sound, they did something really smart.
They hired Japanese composer Kazuo Otani.
Right, and Otani deployed a very specific set of musical markers just for the Japanese market. He used AOR.
Which is adult-oriented rock, right?
Yes, AOR chord progressions. And he paired them with the distinct, smooth, bell-like attack of Fender Rhodes keyboards.
Which completely abandons that bouncy, family-friendly musical vibe we were just talking about.
Totally.
The Fender Rhodes has this warm, electric, almost late-night sophistication to it.
Because in 1980s Japan, that specific instrumentation was the defining sound of city pop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it represented a cosmopolitan urban aspiration. It sounded like an idealized, glamorous version of American life.
So they were essentially using audio aesthetics to sell a hamburger as your personal entry ticket into a sophisticated, modern lifestyle.
Precisely.
Okay, so McDonald's successfully claims this massive territory. They own cheerful global pop, they own family happiness, and now they own the sophisticated urban aspiration.
They are the undeniable establishment.
Right. Which means if you are Burger King, you are looking at the sonic landscape and realizing you cannot out McDonald's.
You just look like a cheap copy.
Exactly. You need a completely different strategy.
You have to become the anti-establishment. So Burger King's overarching theme became rebellion and freedom.
Which, of course, tethered perfectly to their famous have it your way ethos.
Right. McDonald's says we are all one big, happy, global family eating the exact same burger. Burger King says you are a rugged individual who refuses to conform.
But to build that sonic rebellion, Burger King didn't just hire a bunch of corporate ad guys to write, fake rock music.
No, they went straight to the icons of alternative music.
Yeah, in 1999, they launched the Whopper Rap, and they brought in the Dust Brothers to produce it.
Which is a huge deal.
For anyone unfamiliar, the Dust Brothers are legendary New York producers. They fundamentally shaped the sound of the Beastie Boys and back in the 90s.
And the Dust Brothers applied a completely different architectural approach to commercial music.
How so?
Instead of a sweeping melody, they took the literal descriptions of the product, like the physical ingredients of the Whopper, and chopped them up.
Oh.
They used the vocal delivery as a rhythmic, percussive beat. It possessed this raw, sample-heavy texture that stood in stark contrast to the polished, symphonic style of early McDonald.
Okay, hold on. I need to jump in and push back on this idea of rebellion for a second.
Okay, go for it.
Because if I am a diehard Beastie Boys fan in 1999,
Right.
and I hear the masterminds behind Paul's Boutique producing a commercial for a fast food cheeseburger, I am not thinking rebellion.
You're thinking sellout.
Exactly. I'm thinking sellout. Doesn't the consumer see right through the irony of using anti-establishment underground hip-hop to, move corporate fast food inventory?
That's a really fair point. But what's fascinating here is that the cognitive dissonance you're pointing out doesn't actually negate the psychological impact of the brand alignment.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The consumer's logical brain obviously knows it is a corporate advertisement.
Yeah.
But the sonic texture, that choppy, raw, underground beat, it bypasses that logic.
Oh, interesting.
It speaks directly to their emotional identity. Burger King wasn't actually trying to overthrow the government, obviously. They were signaling to the alternative crowd, hey, we speak your language.
Okay, so it's about validating the listener's self-image.
Exactly.
You listen to cool, edgy music, therefore you eat at the cool, edgy burger place.
And they doubled down on that exact signaling for years.
They really did.
In the late 90s United States campaigns, they had Mark Mothersbaugh, the frontman of the highly subversive new wave band Devo.
That's amazing.
Right, providing these driving, eccentric guitar and synth tracks.
Yeah.
And then, for a limited campaign in Europe, they actually recruited the electronic music pioneers Daft Punk to arrange the rhythms.
Putting Daft Punk's futuristic, robotic, relentless house beats underneath a burger commercial is just such a flex.
It's incredible.
It is a stunning roster of talent. But this introduces a really interesting problem, I think.
What's that?
If McDonald's owns the massive global pop space and Burger King owns the loud, rebellious rock and electronic space, consumers eventually get exhausted by the sheer volume of it all. Like, you don't always want a pop concert or a rap battle with your lunch.
No, definitely not.
Sometimes you just want intimacy.
And this is where we see the concept of sound branding evolve away from traditional music and into total environmental design.
Yeah.
The MMR column highlights the Japanese chain Moss Burger as the real pioneer of this shift. They abandoned both the pop and the punk approaches.
In favor of what they called organic sound aesthetics.
Exactly.
The instrumentation choices here are just brilliant. Instead of synthesizers or Broadway vocalists, Moss Burger brings in composer Hajime Mizuguchi and the acoustic duo Hanaregumi.
Right.
They use ukuleles, acoustic guitars, and acoustic pianos. And the source material specifically notes that these instruments were chosen to represent the connection between nature and people.
Because a ukulele creates a sense of campfire intimacy. It tells the listener, subconsciously, that the food is handmade. It's not mass-produced on some cold assembly line.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But Moss Burger's true innovation was the integration of literal physical sound.
This part blew my mind.
Yeah, they brought in the musician Ohashi Trio to arrange an environmental sound design utilizing field recordings of the actual food preparation.
Right. So long before ASMR became a massive internet phenomenon, Moss Burger was recording the crisp, physical sound of a knife cutting through fresh lettuce.
Literally.
The actual sound of bread baking. The highly specific rustle of opening a paper bag.
And by taking those environmental sounds and arranging them musically alongside those acoustic instruments, they directly linked the auditory experience to the physical, tactile reality of the product.
It triggers a multisensory anticipation.
Exactly.
Because eating is not just about what hits your tongue, it's the crunch, the texture, the atmosphere of the room.
Yeah, it's a whole experience.
And we see this exact strategy of like vibe crafting applied by other brands in the column, just pointed at completely different aesthetics.
Like Lotteria.
Yes, take Lotteria. Starting in 1985 and moving through the 90s, they completely leaned into a sleek, Japanese modern design and techno-pop route.
They collaborated with artists like Yoshinori Tsunohara and Hiroshi Fujiwara.
Right.
And those digital, futuristic beats created a sophisticated, urban dining room that felt miles away from an acoustic campfire.
Completely different vibe. And then you have Freshness Burger,
Oh, yeah.
who are early adopters of the philosophy that music supports the taste. They brought in Toru Hashimoto from Suburbia to curate their in-store background music.
And he filled the space with jazz and bossa nova.
Right. The slow, relaxed sway of bossa nova acts as psychological architecture. It tells the customer, take your time, relax. You are in a premium, high-end cafe.
But this raises a really important question, though.
What is it?
If these brands are successfully engineering the emotional vibe of the room, are they also engineering our physical, biological reaction to the food itself?
Well, here's where it gets really interesting, because the answer is absolutely yes.
It's cool.
We've talked about brand identity up to this point, but the MMR column dives into the quantifiable science of how sound physically manipulates the eating experience.
And the data is staggering. Let's go back to that tube and flute example from the beginning of the deep dive.
Yes.
The psychology of sound and taste is deeply interconnected through a phenomenon known as cross-modal correspondence.
Right.
Now, to be clear, the sound waves are not physically altering the taste receptors on your tongue.
That would be magic.
Right. Rather, your brain is taking in multiple sensory inputs simultaneously and blending them together to form your perception of flavor.
And according to the research cited in the column, the pitch of the music heavily influences that perception.
Yeah.
High-pitched sounds, like a flute or a tinkling piano, actually cause your brain to emphasize the perception of sweetness in whatever you are currently eating.
Conversely, low-pitched sounds, like a heavy bass line or a brass instrument, cause the brain to emphasize bitterness.
Wow.
The audio is literally functioning as an invisible seasoning.
That is just incredible. But they aren't just seasoning the flavor right, they are engineering your speed, too.
This is the operational side of it.
Yeah, the column details how the background music, or the BGM metric, is perhaps the most heavily weaponized aspect of all this.
Yeah.
The data shows that a store playing background music at exactly 120 beats per minute increases their customer turnover rate by a massive 15%.
Which is huge for business. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, 120 beats per minute is roughly the tempo of a brisk, energetic walk.
Okay.
It's a driving pace. When a restaurant pumps that specific tempo into the dining room, your body subconsciously synchronizes to it.
Wow.
You chew faster, you finish your meal faster, and you leave the table faster.
Which allows the restaurant to serve more customers during the busy lunch rush.
It is a brilliant mechanism of operational efficiency hidden in plain sight.
And that level of precision engineering has only accelerated as we've moved into the digital era.
Oh, without a doubt.
Because today, brands do not have a full 60-second television spot or a captive audience sitting in a dining room to capture your attention.
No, they have milliseconds.
They have to hook you on a smartphone screen before your thumb swipes to the next video.
Which is why the sound logo has been completely reconstructed for maximum efficiency. McDonald's provides the ultimate case study here with their global 5-note jingle.
The instantly recognizable ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Exactly. That sonic signature began in 2003 with the I'm Lovin' It campaign featuring Justin Timberlake and Pharrell Williams.
I remember that everywhere.
Yeah. But what is brilliant is how it has evolved. Pharrell and Japanese musician Hiroshi Kawanabe later supervised its adaptation.
Right.
It is a universally recognized 5-note scale. But the tempo, the key, and the instrumentation are constantly shifting depending on the specific country it is playing in or the specific product being sold.
So it is a localized delivery system for a global psychological trigger. Because in the TikTok and social media era, brands only have a 3 to 5 second window to deliver their entire 50-year sonic history.
Right.
Which means these audio cues are more potent and more carefully produced than ever before. We are seeing this strategy explode with a massive new wave of artist collaborations in the 2020s.
And the underlying strategies remain identical to the 70s and 90s, but the vehicles have modernized.
Give me an example.
Well, in 2021, Mossberger collaborated with Kaho Nakamura,
Okay.
leaning heavily into her ukulele and ambient soundscapes to maintain their handmade, organic identity in a digital space.
Oh, that's smart. Meanwhile, Burger King kept the rebel flag flying high.
Yeah.
In 2022, they teamed up with the Japanese hip-hop duo Creepy Nuts, proving that the raw, anti-establishment rap theme works just as well on a smartphone as it did on a television screen in 1999.
It totally translates. And McDonald's, forever the purveyors of high-energy pop escapism, collaborated with the massive artist Odu in 2023 for their Mac Adventure campaign.
Oh,
They utilized an anime-style visual and sonic structure, meticulously designed to induce sheer euphoria.
it is just a stunning 50-year evolution of oral architecture.
It really is a journey.
We started with the theatrical Broadway escapism of the 70s that actually charted on pop radio.
Yeah.
We moved through the chopped-up, rebellious rap of the Dust Brothers, shifted into the intimate, tactile ASMR of Mossberger,
Right.
and finally arrived at the literal neuroscience of 120 beat-per-minute chewing tempos and 5-note digital triggers.
The amount of invisible engineering constantly surrounding us is truly profound.
So what does this all mean for you? Next time you step through the glass doors of a fast food place or just scroll past an ad on your phone, do not just tune out the background noise.
Pay attention to it.
Realize that every beep, every chord progression, and every tempo is a carefully curated seasoning designed specifically for your brain.
It means you are participating in a highly controlled sensory environment. But, recognizing that control presents a really fascinating opportunity.
Oh, like what?
Well, if high pitches make things taste sweeter, if low pitches bring out bitterness, and if tempo dictates how fast you chew,
Yeah.
what happens if you take the control back?
What do you mean?
The next time you sit down with a meal, what if you put in your own headphones and played your own custom seasoning playlist?
Oh, wow.
Could you completely overwrite the restaurant's intended flavor profile just by changing the song?
Hacking your own taste buds with a playlist, that is such a cool concept.
Right.
I am absolutely going to try playing some high-pitched flutes the next time I order something sweet. Thank you all for joining us on this exploration of sound, society, and sustenance. Keep your ears open, stay curious, and we will catch you on the next Deep Dive.